Hello and welcome to the show where we are talking James Degale versus Caleb Truax for the IBF World Super Middleweight title. If you like what you hear, please consider hitting that subscribe button, thumbs up, any comments would be much appreciated. So as I say, we're talking about James Degale's defense of his IBF World Super Middleweight title against Caleb Truax. This is taking place at the Copper Box Arena in London, one of Frank Warren's cards. We've also got Lee Selby on the card defending his IBF title, and down the card we've got dangerous heavyweight Daniel Dubois fighting again, which is a fight that I'm actually really looking forward to. But this is all about the IBF World Super Middleweight title, and it's about James Degale. Now, I've always been a fan of James Degale, Olympic champion, has a really classy style about him, can be a little bit lacking in the effort sometimes in the past, but he likes to pick his shots and fight his game plan, okay? And, you know, he's only lost once early in his career, in that big fight against George Groves at the O2, which went the full 12. If I remember correctly, it was elevated to the main event. I think it may have been Tony Bellew on the top of the card, maybe. I can't remember now. And I picked James Degale to win that fight. George Groves came up with a phenomenal game plan, and just marginally, I mean, like by a hair's breadth, he got that victory there. Okay, but since then, James Degale has been building up, building towards the world level. He's reached the world level. He's been in there with some decent players in Andre Jarrell, Lucien Boutte, Badou Jack, and he's definitely at the top. What we have here is we have a matchup against Caleb Truax. Now, I didn't really have any confidence that James Degale would be competing against a high-level opponent, because this event was announced just a couple of months ago, and it really wasn't until a few weeks ago that the opponents came to light. So it wasn't a surprise that it wasn't against a high level opponent, okay? But either way, I think the problem is that it was never ever going to be a high level opponent. And this is for a few reasons, but it's kind of like the current state of the super middleweight division. Now, it was just a few short years ago where, for me, the super middleweight division was the showpiece division. It had some amazing fighters putting on amazing fights, and this culminated really for me with the Froch Gross fight, and that's where it kind of begun to tail off. I mean, it continued for a short period, but mainly because there was the Will Cole Froch comeback. Andre Jarrell, will he fight a super middleweight again? We also had Chavez Jr. Will he be competing there? So we had a number of these names that were kind of bringing a bit of fire towards the super middleweight division. There was also a lot of talk over the years about whether Triple G would jump up that weight class. So there was a lot of talk about potential fights at the super middleweight that could happen in conjunction with the young guns coming forward, and the guys that were there, that were the belt holders. And they've kind of all fizzled out. These guys have retired, they've moved different weight classes, or they haven't moved up. And we've been left with kind of a lukewarm division. Now, you combine that with the fact that we've got this World Boxing Super Series tournament going on at the same time, where James Degale is not part of it. Okay, and we're left with very, very few options, because James Degale was never going to compete against any of the guys that were in the first round of that. Okay, so it really leaves his options to be particularly limited. Now, I would expect that James Degale is working towards some kind of unification against the winner of the tournament. Okay, and we know that at this current moment in time, George Groves has a huge fight against Eubank Jr., which is a fight I'm very much looking forward to. And then you've got Smith versus Browne on the other side of the bracket. So we've got those two fights. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards Groves or Eubank to win that. So one of those guys, I would think, would be fighting James Degale sometime next. This is the problem. George Groves versus Eubank is slated for February the 17th. February the 17th. Okay, I'm not sure whether we've got a date for Smith and Browne yet, but the previous rounds all seem to kind of come along in the space of about 1 month. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Smith-Browne fight takes place in February as well, or at the latest early March. So what does that mean? It means that we're probably going to get the final to take place in the summertime. Okay, it could be sometime in the summer, and if Smith makes it through, it's going to be an all British final. They could really put a big show together somewhere. I don't think it has Wembley Stadium appeal. I don't think it's stadium. It doesn't have stadium interest, but I can see it being a big show. So even if you say that it's going to be May, June time or whatever, that means the earliest you're going to see is maybe the autumn, winter time for James Degale to be fighting one of these guys. If these guys want to fight for the third time in a year, which we know is highly unlikely at this sort of level, so it might not be until 2019 that James Degale gets to fight one of these guys, which is a bit of a shame. You look at the Ring magazine rankings at the moment; they've got James Degale as their number 1, Ramirez as 2, George Groves as 3, then Callum Smith, Chris Eubank Jr., and then the Durrells. Okay, so we could see Degale go up against a unifier with Ramirez, or we could see him have a rematch with Durrell or the other Durrell. It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's tricky, as I say. Stuck with this Caleb Truax fight. I mean, he's a massive favourite for this. Just looking at the betting odds for this, Caleb Truax is 20-1 to win this fight. 20-1, right? Whereas James Degale is 1-200. I mean, that type of swing is ridiculous. It's just, for me, it's almost a pointless fight. If those odds are that wide, what's the point? We move into this actual fight, Degale versus Truax, and I mean, I think it will probably be a very one-sided fight. I mean, a very one-sided fight. I would expect it to probably. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if it went the full 12 rounds. And if it goes the full 12 rounds, it would not surprise me if James Degale wins all 12. I mean, we know that he's a classy operator. He likes to move. He likes to pick his shots. He's very accurate with his shots. So it wouldn't surprise me if that is the case. I would expect Truax to be on the front foot. He seems like a very tough guy. He's been a tough guy. He's gone up against some decent opposition. I mean, it seems to me that he's fought most of his career at middleweight. He has had the opportunity against some big names, and he's fallen short against them. And he was stopped against Danny Jacobs. So, I mean, Danny Jacobs dominated that fight despite being on the back foot. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is pretty much a carbon copy. I mean, Degale may get a stoppage, but we know that Degale doesn't generally get a stoppage, get many stoppages. He's just not that type of fighter. He's a fighter that likes to pick his shots, win rounds, or just win them enough. And going back to that George Groves thing, that was his problem. He just didn't do it enough to edge that. Okay, he was picking his shots, but he just didn't do enough. And he's kind of done that in his career. I've noticed it in a lot of his fights where he's been winning fights fairly comfortably, but a lot of the rounds are a lot closer than really they should be for a guy of his ability. So that's what I think. I think it's probably going to go to full 12 rounds. I would expect Degale to win comfortably, maybe a stoppage, but I would say probably full 12 and all in Degale's favour. And then we move forward. As I said, we've discussed this throughout this video. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen in his next fight. We'd like to see him in there against someone decent. I mean, it's a shame that we never got to see the rematch with Badou Jack. He went up in the weight classes. I mean, for me, Badou Jack just edged that. I think it was Badou Jack just edged that. I would have liked to have seen a rematch, but he wasn't keen on staying down at the 168. So it is a bit of a shame for Degale. He's kind of in that kind of no man's land at the moment. We'll just have to wait and see. But as I say, this is taking place at the Copper Box this weekend. Should be an interesting card overall. But as long as James Degale gets the win, retains his belt, he moves forward, hopefully in the direction of possibly a rematch with George Groves. And everyone would love that. But also, I mean, I would be really excited to see how James Degale fights against Chris Eubank Jr. I think that would be something, that would be a real kind of clash of styles. But anyway, that's the end of this video. We'll see you in the next video. Have a great week and enjoy the fight.